Hey everybody, I'm here with my almost lifelong friend here, Dan Geisel. We met when we were 18, 17, 18, 19 years old, whatever it was, but we just figured it's about 20 years of relationship now. And Dan is wise, he's hilarious. But we had a heart to heart today about his dad, about his time deployed in Iraq, about spiritual warfare, and just like we would back in the day. We worked together for a while too, and it was just really nice. We would have long conversations while we were building stuff together. And I'm bringing you into one of those conversations. So excited for you to meet my friend Dan. Yeah, so Dan, we've been friends for 23 years now.
Yep, 23 years.
Fun times. I'll never forget. Yeah, we have a lot of fun, unforgettable stuff, man. So wait, so you and Stacey have been married then since you got married in '06.
Yeah.
You and Stacey have been married
18 years.
Yeah.
That's you 18. Too, right?
Yeah. Well, I felt like you guys were a full year ahead of us though.
No.
Okay.
No, we were June 10th and you were like August.
Yeah. August 11th.
Yep.
Yeah. Going on 18 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I still feel like we can go outside and play basketball and you'd beat me right now. Still today.
I might be in a bed for the next 6 months, but
yeah. Do you play at all?
No.
No?
No.
What do you do to stay in shape?
I don't do anything.
You work hard?
Sure. Yeah. That's about it.
Sure. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we met, okay, so going back to this, we met, you were about 19, you said?
Yeah, 19 or 20. Yeah.
19 or 20. And I was about 18, somewhere around there. And I remember driving in your dad's white BMW and you were flying in that thing, man.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, I like this guy. I felt safe, you know?
Good.
I think we just ran into town to get some waters or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that car had like 200,000 miles on it, I think.
275,000 when it finally died.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I remember thinking like, that's insane.
Yeah.
But your dad would get nice cars because he was in sales, right?
Yep.
And he would drive everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, he put a lot of miles on them. That's about all I got for that.
Dan, when did you come to faith, man? Like
when I was 5.
when you were 5?
Yep. I still remember the day or, the moment. This is my parents' room. And said I wanted to do it, and we did it. Like all held hands, and then that's pretty much all I remember. I think it was 5.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah.
Through the years,
So,
like you went to Hopewell. Did you always live for God through those times?
I mean, for the most part, like I always brought my buddies to church, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But didn't live like wholeheartedly for God. You know what I mean? Kind of had. So I actually had a dream that I don't know how old I was, but I think I was in high school, and I had this dream that I was in a cave, and I heard this like almost like rushing, air-consuming type of a sound. It's almost like a train coming, and it's kind of like a underground subway, but it was just like jagged rock and no tracks. And I stood there for a minute and I listened to it, and it kept getting closer and closer and closer until I started getting a little bit of fear. I'm thinking maybe I should turn and run because it's about to impact me. And then I saw the tunnel at the end starting to light up, and it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then I saw the flame coming. And so I just turned around and started running, and the whole tunnel was being consumed by this blaze. And it was catching me. And I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And right as I reached the light, I dove out of the cave as the fire just stopped at the edge of the cave of this tunnel. And I landed in this like green pasture with a beautiful white fence and beautiful sky. And I looked back at the cave and I thought, man, I was so close. And the fire just went, went back in. It was an empty cave again. And I started going back toward it. And I looked down right where the threshold was, the darkness. And I was like, I ran like a mile and it didn't catch me. I bet I can do a little bit. And so I started walking into the cave, and I probably went in 15 feet. And as soon as I got far enough that felt uncomfortable, I heard it again. And I turned and I ran. And the second I exited the cave, the fire came and went, oh, and it was just like spinning and looking at me and kind of had a face. And it was like almost taunting me, like, do it again. And it left. And I was staring at this empty tunnel. And I was like, I bet I can do it. I bet I can do this. And I looked down, and all I was going to do is just touch and get out. And I felt this like presence looking at me, like basically this like angel shaking his head saying, don't do it. The next time it's going to get you. Like that's how it sets you up. Just a little bit at a time.
Oh, wow.
And the dream kept on going and whatnot. But as soon as I woke up, I knew what it meant. You can't live with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Because obviously the green pasture was like the heavenly realm and the darkness. And so that was kind of a wild dream that didn't like change my life immediately, but it was always in the back of my head.
Yeah.
Like, watch how much you're putting that foot into the world. So, yeah, I mean, high school was high school. It was, everybody knew I was a Christian, but like if I look back, it wasn't a perfect Christian life, by any means. You're a high school kid, you're an idiot, So, but yeah.
How old were you when you had that dream?
I would say 16. I could be off.
Do you have dreams like that a lot?
No.
Was that the only one you had?
Like that?
Yeah. Because your mind works that way. And I've always respected that about you, where you just have a visual, a picture, a movie that kind of plays to illustrate something.
Yeah. As far as dreams that like I can remember to this day, probably like 2. I don't remember the other one right now.
Yeah.
But, like another subject would probably pop up. But, yeah, no, that was like, it was like those moments, not when you wake up and say, hey guys, what do you think this means? It was like the second I woke up, I was like, oh, you were talking to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Was that a moment that God became real though? Like you said, it didn't really impact you that much. It just was in the back of my mind. But okay, so within 2 years, I know you went to Bible school. So you obviously were pretty serious.
I mean, God was definitely real to me as like I guess as a kid. But like our house, I don't know if you want to talk about this. Like
that's
our
fine.
house was
Whatever.
Like haunted.
Okay.
Like it was
so perfect to talk about this here.
Yeah. Okay.
Real. Yeah.
So like our both my parents are awesome, but not together.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And I won't talk about what other people saw, but other people saw very clear spiritual warfare taking place in the house.
Yeah.
And that's their story to tell. Like physical, like saw with their eyes. And, but so we always thought certain individuals were crazy for saying they heard things, and, we would definitely hear things over time and whatnot. But I don't even like to go talk about that kind of stuff because I don't want to like glorify it. You know what I mean?
But it's real.
Yeah. So,
and it's spiritual.
Yeah. Right? So I would definitely say like even in high school, I definitely knew that spiritual.
Were you scared?
No. I actually told my daughter the other day, I was like, you can do one of two things. You can just hide and be scared. Or like when I was young, I just have to like flip a switch. And like if I was home alone, it's dark, and I would hear like sound like footsteps coming down the steps, then I would like go right at them, and I'd be like, let's go. And I was like, let's fight it out. Yeah. Like if you're a freaking spirit, I don't care. I'll throw down. Like, I don't know how I'm going to hit you, but how are you going to hit me? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're a guy.
I saw the movies.
Yeah. If you're a guy breaking into my house and you're like, 40 and I'm 9, like you're going to easily get me if I'm hiding under a bed. But if I come at you swinging,
Yeah.
If I'm full tilt, like you're either going to shoot me or you're going to be like, you're going to have a moment of pause.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of always attack those moments. But
was that ever resolved?
What do you mean? Resolved?
Yeah.
Oh, when we sold it.
Yeah, when you sold it.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those people are like,
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it was out in the middle of the country, and yeah, I don't know.
So be very clear. What is that?
What's what?
Because I know you have the spiritual depth to be able to share with people. If somebody experiences that and they're like, oh, it's haunted, it's ghosts, it's whatever. What is that?
Well, I mean, like, you mean contractual type of thing, or?
Whatever you think. Yeah.
So,
Explain it.
I mean, the way I see it is like a lot of spiritual stuff is the same as physical, like, above and below, and your kingdom come kind of a deal.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like if somebody comes to your house and says, hey, I was actually just telling my son, I was like, if somebody came to the house and said to him, I've got this deed, I need you to sign it, and then so I can take this house. And if my son's like, okay, you're going to give me $5, and he signs it, the judge is going to throw that out.
Mhm.
He's going to be like, this kid's 15 years old. He doesn't own this house. He's the son, but he lives there. He doesn't own the house. He can't technically sign this away. But if the same guy came to me and said, I'm going to give you $5, sign this, and I want $5, and I sign it, now that guy literally has legal authority to take possession of that house. And so just of a physical house, if you're doing things in that house, watching horror movies, physical abuse,
Mhm.
Whatever, all those kind of things, it's along the lines of like, you are signing a contract
Yeah.
and saying, I'm going to live in strife, or I'm going to live in,
Yeah.
you mark the dot.
Wow.
And when that takes place, and I don't know how long, I don't know, how that all works, but you're literally like saying this is an open resort for this darkness that we're living in.
Right.
And that's, I mean, the flip side
Open
is,
window, open door, open
Yeah.
garage door even.
Yep.
Yeah.
and the flip side, which is cooler, is, we just experienced this up in Maine, which was like multiple people. So my buddy just gave his life completely over to God.
Yeah.
And he's got 550 acres up in Maine, and he does a hunting outfit. And so people pay big money to go up and hunt with him, and he's had celebrities, the whole thing. And he just went full tilt, got rid of things that were a lot of money that God
Yeah.
said get rid of. I mean, he just, whatever you want to do, he did it. And we just went up there for this retreat. And person after person, without knowing sometimes who was speaking of different things, sometimes it's behind the scenes, sometimes it's in front of everybody. Everybody was saying the same thing, that his land had been devoted to God. Like, God has ordained his land for a very specific reason. And as long as he continually does what he's doing in pursuing God, that his land will be basically a safe haven for God's presence.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm doing a really good job at not crying.
No, you're great, man.
I've been praying about that for a while.
Yeah.
So people are like, no, it's cool. I'm like, no, it's not, because you can't talk. So I'm actually doing pretty good. But yeah, so it's cool that it's your choice. Like, you have the deed, you can sign it to whoever you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as your body, your life, your house, your family. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And so the authority is yours for your family, right?
yeah.
It was interesting as we talk about this. Our situation. I can't talk about our foster situation too much, but we ran into some things there
Yeah.
that were very real, and we had learned this principle pretty early in our faith that, hey, this is our home, this is our authority.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a dream, and then there was a situation where one of the kids said something that was completely in line with that dream. I talked to Pastor Larry about it, like a spiritual covering. I'm like, hey, we're facing this, and then someone in the system, the foster system, came over, and they had witchcraft all over.
Oh yeah.
They had jewelry and stuff like that, and they were, this was one of the transporters early on. You
Yeah.
know? I'm only saying what I can say, but we learned we take that authority And it's funny because, you can let that kind of like go, and it's always wanting to find its way back. It's like, I wish I could just take it once and pray once, and then, we never experience that again. So we have learned we're going to be people of prayer. We're going to remain. There's not going to be chaos that comes into our home from this.
Yeah.
We're not allowing that. We're a home that's filled with peace. We take authority over it. I'm the one who prays. I'm the one who asserts authority. And man, I'll talk to the enemy and be like, nah, you have no root in my family, in my home.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah.
It's real eye-opening when your eyes become open to seeing it, I should say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Like when somebody different enters your home, because we had this before, and immediately one of our children woke up with like night terrors. Mm-hmm. We knew this person. We didn't invite them. They came with somebody, and we're only there for a minute. And the next morning, one of my kids woke up screaming, and immediately.
Yeah. Yep.
Like immediately, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And but it's just cool to know what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I actually went in his room, and they were hiding in the corner with the door. Like, I didn't know where they were. I'm like, this never happens. And they were curled up behind the door, just like terrified. And so I said, get up in your bed. We're going to take care of this now. And we prayed it off, and boom, that was it. No more. It was over. And so when it's not something you brought in, I feel like it's much easier.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you didn't sign that deed.
Yes.
They broke into the door, and you found them.
Yeah.
And you took them out.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, because they have no authority. But
Pastor Larry, when I talked with him about that, he had been studying it that week, and he led me through a prayer of authority that was so strong in his heart, and it was so relevant to the situation. It was cool how God spoke to him and just like prepared his heart. Yeah. So he could share that with me. We pray now a wall of fire and a hedge of protection around our kids, all of them.
Yeah.
Wall of fire, hedge of protection. You ever see Tim Hawkins? You remember him? He's like, a hedge. It's like, Satan's only weakness is landscaping, So funny back in the day. Yeah. He was funny, man. He was funny. But yeah, man, it's like, it's real. It's real. Oh, yeah. And then you being in physical war compared to spiritual war, like, are there tie-ins with that?
I mean, another story from somebody else, not mine, but there was a guy from SEAL Team 6 that obviously he became a Christian, but obviously he pushed his body to the limit, and basically said, like, I never lose, right? Like, physically, I always accomplish what I set out to do. I conquer everything. When I'm at war, what they were doing every night, just dropping bodies. The conflicts that he was in with how many face-to-face, potentials for death or, to win or lose. And he said, I didn't lose any of them, and I'm afraid to pray with my wife. He got to the point where, he wanted to take his life. And right before he did, he stopped, and he was like, the understanding of spiritual war just clicked. And he's like, I've won every war literally in physical world, and I'm about to lose one in the spiritual world. Wow. And once he understood that, he was like, I never thought about it again. He's like, I will never lose a spiritual war. Yeah. And he's like, why is it so easy for me to go out and slay dudes all night, and I can't sit there with my wife and pray? He's like, that needs to change. You know what I mean? Dude. So yeah. It's interesting because, like, I guess military stuff, a lot of it is in the mind, but then it's physical too. But like the spiritual war, it's like almost all in the mind, and your belief and your faith and your understanding. And
there's sometimes less evidence of the conflict that's
Well, yeah.
just right in front
So,
of
yeah,
you.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's just like overseas, you can't always identify the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part. It's very frustrating, you know,
Yeah.
it's they pop, 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 and then they disappear. And you know that's over there somewhere, the spiritual war is sometimes even worse because you don't even know the pop, pop, pop took place. You know, you're even getting shot at.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're screaming back and forth with your kids or your wife or whatever
Right.
it is.
Yeah.
And you go to bed angry and you don't even realize
Yeah.
something just slid in and started twisting things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So when you realize that, it's like a game changer. And
It's funny because, you know, when I would talk with some old timers early on in ministry, you know, I'm like fascinated by this stuff, but then everything was a demon in their mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a little weird. But then I start to talk to the, you know, like I started to listen a little bit more because they've been around, you know, somebody like Mark Geppert, who has been a part of the underground church for most of his life now, you know, and he's gone into situations and they've had visions and they've seen the Lord move in ways that, like, man, unbelievable. But when the one thing he said about that I'll never forget, he said, when someone comes into the church and they're divisive, he said, I call it what it is. And I was like, what is it? He said, oh, they're filled, they're influenced by demons. That's what he said. I'm like, huh, you know, but you think about it, like, whoa, dude, no, that's actually true. He said division is demonic.
even manipulation, like
Manipulation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, we do see both of those things in the church world, you know, like
Yeah.
people try to manipulate and try to get their own way, or people try to, you know, rally the troops and get everybody to hear their story. And man, they've given voice to the enemy.
Yeah.
And he's come in and worked to try to divide the camp. And there's so many people who are hurt because of it. And maybe they only know a quarter of the story. You know, this one guy said to me one time about a divisive issue. There's a person who really gave their mind over to things, and they started talking with people about something that it wasn't even true. This guy said to me, I heard their story and I believe it. And I was like, yeah, but you only heard part of the story. And I said, what if it's just a partial truth? And he's like, no, I heard the full story from them and I believe it. And I said to him, well, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I have the right to believe what you believe is crap. Guy started laughing. It actually opened up the door for a great conversation.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's real, right? It's real. And, you know, that warfare can be, it's not just blatant witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just in the back alleys of New York or Chicago where somebody's getting stabbed or shot. Like, spiritual warfare is right in front of us every day.
Yeah.
It's right in front of us every day. You know, we fight from a place of victory, but we have to appropriate that victory, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like anything else. You have to identify it first. And the hard part is sometimes it changes to whatever you're kind of more open to. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So something so simple, but when I went on the first retreat, the whole time in the back of my head, I kept thinking, you know, I'm just going full tilt, whatever, just I'm here for myself, you know, I'm not holding back anything. Let's do this. But the whole time I kept thinking, enjoy this, like, because it's a high, right? You're on this spiritual high for a couple of days. You're away from everything, disconnected. And I had this little fear that when I get back, everything's going to go right back. You go back to life.
Yeah.
Right. And I kept thinking like, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Right. I'm going to stay like this, just like camp or anything like that. Anybody has ever gone away, disconnected. I mean, even a vacation, you know, like you're feeling peaceful and you're like, when I get back to the grind, you know, it's gone and you want to hold on to it. And, but you get to this point where you're so focused on it. And that's the problem, I think, is like we go through life not focused on it. And so when things start pecking, we just start accepting it because we're not thinking that it's pecking.
Yeah. Right.
And it was the last day. It was literally like they were saying goodbye. And I walked off to grab some stuff by myself. And I mean, it wasn't audible, but it was there. And it was just enjoy this moment because it's gone. Like
Yeah.
your high is coming down.
Yeah.
And I had like heard that, those thoughts kind of before. And like, you would just be like, yeah, that's me thinking, here we go back to the grind. And you just accept it. But I was at a place just after a few days where it was so clear that it was a spiritual warfare that immediately I was like, oh no, I know that voice. You don't belong there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't accept it.
Yeah.
And I went home and things were different.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if anybody sees it or not. Like,
Right.
it's different with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just knowing you're in a war is like the first
It's in
step.
the mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually, Joyce Meyer wrote the book Battlefield of the Mind. It
Yeah.
really is the battlefield,
Yep. And just like you said, you can feel people if they like you or not, or if they're
Yeah.
enjoying the worship or whatever. And it's like the same thing. It's like that battlefield of like accepting what you perceive somebody else thinking of you, and then you start to think, oh, the guy don't like me very much, and you let that start to,
Yeah.
and then you actually
The
find out.
hurt whisperer comes in. He
Yeah.
just whispers just something in your ear and you take it.
And you talk to the guy a week later, and he's like, I didn't think that. I thought you were awesome, and you're like, oh, this whole time I thought I
Yeah.
sucked,
Right.
So yeah, yeah.
So so you went through high school, you went through Bible school, and then you just decide to go to war.
Well,
I was as a friend perspective, that's the way it seemed to me. And I was like, Dan, why do you got to do this, man? Like, you don't have to go in the Marines. Like,
yeah.
you can take the safe route.
I didn't decide to go to Bible school because that was out of Jack.
Okay.
So that's where
God just,
everything shifted.
what happened there?
Well,
Like, well,
let's get on that couch.
yeah.
Well, it was I went to Jack like, I don't know, 4 years. And in 10th grade, was the first year I remember we were doing worship, and I heard like I was called to do something else. I don't remember if it was missions or ministry. It was an M, and just like called, you're set apart for something. And I was like, okay, cool. And as soon as worship was over, this just went back in my daily life. And then over that year, I heard, if you ever hear something, God's calling you to do something, tell somebody.
Yeah.
Because then they can hold you accountable. So 11th grade, after I finished 11th grade, that summer, we're doing praise and worship at Jack, and I heard, I've called you to ministry or missions or whatever it was. And that's clearly how much it meant to me. I'm just like, okay. And I told somebody, and I was like, hey, I felt like God telling me this. And they were like, cool. And that was it. And they might ask one time, what'd you ever do with that? I'm like, nothing. A year goes by. So now I graduate. I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to go to college because that's what you're supposed to do. And didn't really have a clear plan. And so I go back to Jack, and we're doing praise and worship. And so we're doing actually praise. It was really loud, and it was like full tilt. It was like Launch Me or something like that.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yep.
And so I put my hands up like I had done before. I was worshiping, whatever. And just kind of felt like louder, right? So I do it a little louder. And then you feel like that I should get on my knees at this moment, right? And I kind of felt like he was saying, get on your knees, like worship me in full. I was like, okay. So I listened, and it's like the dirty carpet,
Yeah.
at Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get on my knees and I'm worshiping, and he says, after a little bit of time of that, he's like, get on your face. So I sprawl out, and I'm still kind of like just down, but like laid out.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, get dirty. Like, lay down and get dirty before me. So I sprawl out, put my head sideways so it touches the disgusting carpet.
Yeah.
It probably hasn't been vacuumed in 30 years. And, but it was kind of cool because it was dirty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like even more so. And then he's like, louder. So I go louder. And there's people around me that are like not enjoying worship, right? As much.
Sure.
Or I'm like, I could be trying to be cool for, at this moment, like the world is gone.
Yeah.
Like, nobody exists. And, I'm just screaming my head off, whatever the words were. And then I just heard like, shh, now it's time to listen. So I leaned back and, just like sit on, I can't sit Indian style. So I just curled my legs up and wrapped my arms around my knees. And I just kind of buried my head between my knees and just sat there like, kind of like when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And your dad wants to have a chat.
Yeah.
It was that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like I've had before, like, you almost like feel God laughing or like Jesus laughing and having a blast. And you're like, oh, this is cool. And this was not that moment. And right then, like I said, it was like loud worship, right? Right then, the worship leader says, hey, whoa, calm it down. And I'm like, oh,
Whoa.
no.
Yeah. Right in line.
This is about to get real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this whole area, like all 300 kids or whatever,
Yeah.
are all being quiet now because I'm about to hear something. And yeah, he like calmed, he like told the drums to be quiet. He's like, we're like, I swear he said something like, we're at a, this is like a reverent moment or like something like that. And so he like calms the whole,
Ryan had such a gift to hear God in those moments.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was insane.
You're taking me there.
And he just goes down to like just plucking his guitar. And I'm just sitting there like, oh man. Like it was the first moment where I kind of came back out and was like, it was like I was in the throne room and then I came out and was like, oh my gosh, like the real world just stopped for this moment.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know a whole lot of like the way I guess God talked and, Jesus and like the New Testament until I guess later. But the first thing he did was he asked a question and he said, why don't you trust me?
God, not Ryan, right?
Yeah, God, right.
Yeah.
He says, why don't you trust me? And at that moment you can see that, how it says like he searches a man's soul and like he knows, right?
Yeah.
And you could feel it in that moment. And like there's no hiding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's like, why don't you trust me? And I'm like, I don't know. I do. Like, I was going to like pull one on him, And he goes, then why haven't you listened? And like he knew it was coming. Like he knew I'd be like, I do? To see like how he'd respond.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he was already ready. He's like, then why haven't you listened? And I was like, with two questions, I was pinned. And I was like, I don't know. And I just sat there. I'm like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And he says, I hold the entire universe and the blueprints of the whole universe in the palm of my hand. And he's like, I'm the architect of everything. I've created everything. It was just like this whole understanding, kind of like to Job. And it was like, I'm all of this. And then just stopped again. He goes, and you don't trust me. And I was like, when you put it that way,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, you're right. I'm like, I had nowhere to go. And I'm like, I serve you. You're calling me out. I can either run or I can like just dive in, I guess. And at the moment I was just like, yeah, 100%. I'm like, you're right. I'll do anything you want. I'm like, I got nothing to lose. Whatever this is all about, I'll do it. And that's when I felt like I saw a picture of the United States, and it was I probably wasn't good at geography, so I saw more like Arkansas, area. But that's where I saw, and I saw you're going to school there. And I was like, he was like, oh, you want to do this? You want to go all in? First task, you're going to school here. And I was like, okay. Like I agreed. And I don't remember if this was before or after he kind of started showing me things, but after I said like I'm all in, I saw kind of said, how you said I see things, like like movies playing. I didn't see anything. I maybe saw like a fabric of like the universe when he was explaining that, but then everything stopped. Like when I mean that, I saw the universe, like I saw the planets and everything. Everything just went, and everything stopped, like birds, everything, and. He said, Daniel, I love you. And it was like, it was like the whole universe stopped because it was like, here it comes. And it was like they all listened. And when he said it, they were like, oh, and then they started going again. And I was like,
oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa. Like, the praise and worship stopped for that moment. Like the universe stopped so that he could say one thing.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And then over the years, I found out, like when you read about Jesus and they're like, what do you say about this? And he's like, what do you say about this? And they're like, I don't know. And he goes, well, when you figure it out, come ask me and I'll tell you. Like just always setting people up. I don't know why I gave him that voice, but sorry. But
all you sinners, come with me.
But
did you ever see those old Jesus videos? They give him that voice.
Did they? That's probably where it came
That's probably where it came from.
Yeah. So
Playing your football on Sundays.
yeah, that's how they see him. But yeah, so I started seeing like this is how he talks, and then I found out, oh, he talked to Job a lot like that.
Oh yeah,
and different things.
Oh, dude,
and,
that's cool.
And it says like he calls his own by their name and stuff like that, and they know when his sheep know his voice and know when he calls their name and stuff like that, whatever. And I started finding all this out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this all happened to me. And I saw somebody was teaching on like the obedience, and they were like, it starts off with your hands, open. Yeah. And they're like, that goes to your knees, and like different levels of like being before God. And then it goes to your face, and then it goes to the piece where God begins to speak or something like that. Speaks to you. And it's not you speaking to him anymore. It's you actually quiet enough to listen to him. Yeah. Like waiting on him. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So like all these things over the years, I'm like, I didn't know what was happening, but he literally took me through these different steps, just all in one little. So that was what totally changed the game for me. And like I actually came back from that camp and saw high school buddies, and so I actually swore a lot in high school, and I came back. I didn't even notice I wasn't swearing anymore. And first thing I did was talk to my mom and dad and said, hey, I'm not going to college. And my dad laughed, and I didn't know why, but apparently it's kind of the same thing happened to him. I didn't find out till after he passed. Yeah, he went to Bible school up in Michigan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wanted to be a what's the pilot called?
Missionary pilot. What?
Yeah, it goes in like a bush pilot. He wanted to be a bush pilot.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yep.
I could see him being a bush pilot.
I know.
I mean, that plane, would it be safe?
Terrifying everybody, but he'd be
probably
laughing. Yeah, like the old, like, what was it, Tailspin, planes going down and he's just still talking. Yeah. But, yeah, so, and then my mom, she was like, she said, well, that makes sense, because I've turned in your paperwork 4 times now, or however many times. And she's like, they keep saying your social security number is wrong, and it's not. And she's like, I would have been, whatever the deposit would have been, the down payment, that was non-refundable.
Wow.
She's like, they kept rejecting the payment like over and over. And after like 2 times or whatever, she said, I'm going to wait till he gets back from camp. and see if something's happening. And so she was like, well, that makes sense.
Receptive mother.
Yeah. So, I went and got ice cream with some of my buddies, and one of them pulls me to the side and he's like, hey, what happened? And I'm like, I'm playing dumb, you know? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, you're like different. And I'm like, I've been around you guys for like 20 minutes. He's like, yeah, everybody's talking about it. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, because he did want to know. He wasn't like,
Yeah, he was a
setting
good
up
friend.
to make fun of you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't care, but yeah. So I kind of told him it was like literally like a Moses coming down from the mountain.
Mhm.
Like he's like, you look different. Like
Yeah.
your face looks different. Like I get you aren't swearing, but your face looks different. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that was a moment where I was like, wow, this is physical too.
Yeah.
Like how much you can change and not even realize it. But yeah, from that moment, that was like really the last time I ever swore. I mean,
Wow.
other than like, by myself and somebody cuts me off and
Mhm.
you're like, whoops,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of deal. But yeah, I mean, that was like just gone. Yeah, but so yeah, went to school after that and didn't know what I was going to do after school. That's
Yeah.
what it was. I just got the first step. So I did it. And that's where Pastor Larry, school was like really soon, right? Because I got out of Jack and it was like 2 weeks I got to go to Bible school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to figure everything out. He's like, why don't you take a year, just intern with the church, get everything set up, everything put together,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and then go to Bible school after that. And I was like, yeah, that's really wise of him. And I think really the wise part was he was like, you're still a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so the good thing was like,
That gap year, it really does well for some people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you see people that are in the music industry or actors or whatever, they become saved, totally change their life, and then they just get taken back out into sea,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so even though I was going to go to a Bible college or whatever, I had PL on my butt 24/7.
Yeah.
That's
He was
where-
great at it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, I don't know how he does it,
Still is.
but he does.
Yeah.
He can be so firm with you,
Yeah.
and
But in love.
you never take it personally.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
He's a coach.
it's like the football coach.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
I've received many of those conversations
yeah.
through the years. I still do.
And it's like you almost like it.
Yeah.
You're like, punish me.
Yeah.
He's like, don't do that again. And you're
Yeah.
like, I won't. Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Right.
But
Right. It's because it's always he corrects us in love, and you always know it's love.
yeah,
And I've received correction from people. I'll say I haven't received correction from people who attempted to give me correction, but they didn't know me. They didn't know my heart. So when they don't know you, how can they really admonish you?
yeah, Yep.
You can try to correct someone's behavior, but they're not going to receive it.
yeah,
It's not spoken in
yeah.
love.
Because you're not in there.
He spent time with us. He
Yeah.
talked with us. He knew us. He knew where our hearts were. He knew who we were,
Yeah.
and he still does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I could not talk to him for 5 years, and if he hasn't done this, but he could text me and be like, I saw something. Don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you got it
For sure.
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yep. Yep.
But yeah. So
He would say right now, sometimes there's a time where the child becomes the parent.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that our relationship is there where, but like there have been times where like we're working together and I'm like, hey man, you got to smile. Like you got to be nice,
PL.
right? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And he talks about that too. Like when I was just spoke at his church recently, he's like, I correct Zach, but sometimes he corrects me. And that's what's cool because like if you see something, I don't have to pretend like it's okay. And I would expect nobody on my team, if I did something wrong to offend them, just pretend like, oh yeah, let's just sweep this under the rug. Like call me to the plate. Like tell me, because we're in a relationship with one another. Don't hide that. If I offend you or if I say
'cause
something,
if somebody's not
it's
like
all
that,
of us together. We're a team.
yeah.
If
If leaders aren't like that, that's where it gets real dangerous.
right, right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where there have been times you've seen Pastor Larry under stress.
Oh yeah.
Where we've all as men, we put our stress hat on and we just start get it done. And I didn't carry the stress in the context of that situation, but that's what is easy to. That's why it's easy to receive from him. I think
Yeah.
it's mutual. Not that we're going to do it, but if we needed to, he would listen.
Yeah.
And he knows us.
Yep.
He only wants us to be better. No agenda.
Yeah, like you said, you know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And that's like a big part. And he's in your life to know. Like, just like you said, you can't reach out to somebody you don't really know and be like, hey, man,
Yeah.
don't do that again,
Right.
or whatever. But because they just get offended.
We teach a principle in parenting and in leadership. Talk to your kids or talk to your team about things that don't matter. So when you have to talk to them about things that do matter, they can hear you.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, you just talk to us about football. Talk to us,
Yeah.
what's going on? What you up to? Like every day when we were in there, he would talk to us about nothing,
Yeah.
So it wasn't filled with all business all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. You could always tell he's trying to point you in a good direction.
Yeah. So you had him keeping you accountable that year.
Yeah.
You made a lot of videos, probably a lot of skits.
Yeah. And there were some people that tried to be my bumper that it didn't work. Like there was a lot of friction there,
Yeah.
but not with PO.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where I met Stacy. She was helping out twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I had given up like dating, given up everything. So there was no chance for her. And then just one day I was like, something just changed.
Yeah.
And we became friends and started dating when I went to school. And then, finished that year, went to school. After my first year, didn't really know what I wanted to do. But at that point, like I had guys that I went to school with a lot of guys joining the military because it was like that year. It was like the cool thing to do, I guess. After the attacks, everybody was going. And I'm like, no, I got to do something different. Like, I don't know what God has for me, but that'd be great, but that ain't it.
Mm-hmm.
And after a year of school, I came back and I was like, this is all of a sudden it's like, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I don't do it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And there's no other step. Like, it's all I could see.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see anything beyond it.
Yeah.
Like, well, if you don't do this, what are you going to do? I'm like, just dream about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just like it was consuming me.
Yeah.
And there was just different moments that were kind of like leaving, kind of, I guess, like affirming,
Yeah.
or confirming that. And then one of the big ones was because you're always a little bit, I don't know why, but you're always a little nervous to tell your parents,
Yeah.
like, hey, I want to do this. And because you're always looking for that approval and they're not going to approve it, I think is what it is, because they want your safety. And I didn't say anything. And it was that summer we were watching some war scenes on the TV, and my dad was like, he was pretty cool, huh? I was like, yeah. And all the guys are cheering, stuff's blowing up. And he's like, I think every young man should go for at least 2 years. That'd be good for them. Serve their country. And he like turned and I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah, I think it'd be good for them. I'm like,
It's like the Red Ryder BB gun moment.
yeah. I was like,
he knew.
no way.
Yeah.
Well, but he didn't want me to, like, at all.
No?
No. All of a sudden it changed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know if I told him. I might have told him right then. I said, well, I'm actually thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do it, Dad. And he was like, what? Like, all of a sudden he's like, not you. Like, after you. Kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
other people. And I was like, no, I'm actually, that's all I've been thinking about, Dad. And he's like,
Was that the only time you saw your dad have any kind of fear?
I put it in him a couple of times while driving.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's always I'll call my brother immediately and be like, got him.
Got it.
He won't say anything. He'll just look at you. Yeah. I mean, when he taught me how to drive, I was on my permit and I'm doing like 55 and a 45 and he smacks my leg and I'm like, what? And he gives me the, like, pick it up. And I'm like, come on, granny, And I'm like, Dad, I'm doing 55 and a 45. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm like, okay. So that's, I guess, where that came from. But it was like, yeah, he was never mad for you, like, doing something nuts.
Yeah.
Like, you never got yelled at for that.
Yeah.
He would just laugh. He'd give you a look like you're an idiot,
Yeah.
you know. But that was it. Like I never got punished for. You almost get more for playing it too safe, you know. But
Right.
um,
One person I read recently says, do you want your boys strong or do you want them safe?
yeah,
You'll have to make a choice.
yeah, safe ain't good.
Right. They
Safe
get afraid
is-
of everything. That's
Yeah.
why you're, chasing a demon in the stairwell at 9 years old.
Yeah, I
You
guess.
know, most kids would hide.
Well, it might have come from him telling me how to change the plates or like sockets, you know, plate covers, or
Yeah.
a dirt bike wasn't starting up, and he's not alive to defend himself. But this is the way it went. He said, I said, "Hey, Dad, the dirt bike isn't starting up," and he said, "Well, take the spark plug out, put your finger in there, and give it a kick. See if it's got fire, like see if it's got shock or spark." And I was like, "Okay." So I went out like an idiot. I took the spark plug out, put my finger in there, and I went to start it like I was trying to start it up. It's the only thing I ever kicked, you know, like I kick it to start it.
Yeah.
And I thought my hand blew up. And like, it was crazy. Like I thought my heartbeat was in my hand.
Oh, wow.
Like it was, and I walked over and I yelled in the house. I said, "Hey, I think my hand exploded." And he goes, "Well, how hard did you kick it?" I go, "I was trying to start it." He goes, "Yeah." He started cracking up. He's like, "That's the dumbest thing I ever heard." And I'm like, "You didn't tell me how hard to kick it." He's like, "Well, it's gonna electrocute you, you know, like can't kick it too hard." So yeah, I got an awesome spark. So that wasn't the spark plug's problem, but yeah. So it's a bunch of little stuff like that,
Yeah.
like knocking trees over in the woods and
Yeah.
crazy stuff. But yeah, they always have me pull it. I'm like, "Isn't it gonna come towards me then?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "So it's gonna land on me." He's like, "Don't let it land on you." Like he was like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I'm going a step ahead. Like, why would I do this part?" He's like, "You'll be fine."
I can see why you think through so much.
Yeah.
I can.
But yeah. Anyway, so
So he didn't want you to go.
no, I mean, he was he let it go. He wasn't like he was gonna fight me,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I was serious, and basically everybody, like Stacy was like, she's like, "You're not going." I'm like, "No, I'm going."
Yeah.
Like nobody's gonna stop me on this
Yeah.
one. And so I went down and I said, "Hey, I want to go." And they were like, "Okay, well, we have college options. They were trying to sell me on it." I'm like, "Dude, stop. Where do I sign?" And he's like, "Well, what do you think about?" I'm like, "Just give me the paper. Stop trying to recruit and just let me do it." You know, they were trying to tell me to do this and do that. Like,
Who, the recruiters?
yeah, go Intel and do all these things. And I'm like, "I'm going grunt." Because they're like, "No," you know, like, and I'm like, "That's all I want." So, yeah, so that's what we did. But, so I was like, for that second year of school, I was like, just figuring everything out, getting everything kind of understood what I'm going to be doing, you know, like all that kind of stuff, whatever. And so after that second year, because I wanted to finish school, I knew I had to.
Yeah.
After that, then yeah, I just went down, signed the paper, and it was a pretty wild ride. Like I think I left in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like from the time I sold or signed, yeah, sell yourself to the government. From the time I signed, I don't know, maybe a month. They were like, "Its soonest ship is like 3-4 weeks." I was like, "Cool." So I did that.
So,
Yeah.
went to basic and then went overseas.
Yeah, by the time I got out of training, the guys I was linking up with were already, they're already like moving toward their final like training phase, like
Yeah.
work up toward going overseas. And there was a group of, I don't know, 100 dudes in this room, and they were all sitting there. As we just finished, School of Infantry, and they call 6 names, and we go into this room, and this officer is like, "Here's your commanding officer. be smart, you know. And you're like, hello, sir. And he's like, you ready to go to war? And you're like, yes, sir. And he's like, okay, pack your bags, meet us out in California or wherever, you know, 29 Palms. And we go back and sit down, and everybody's like, what was that? What was that? And we're like, I'm going to war in 2 weeks. And everybody's like, what? You know, I get to train for like, you know, 9 months is like minimum for everybody else. And so, yeah, I went home, literally finished training, went home, and had a couple days, and then flew out.
So you only trained for 2 weeks, and everybody else was 9 months.
Yeah, everybody usually gets to meet their unit
Yeah.
in a training phase.
Yeah.
And is with them for 9 months, and then does a 2-month workup. And so my guys had already done all that. And they were on the back side of their 2-month workup.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm walking in, you know, like, where do I go? But
Did you have a hard time being like just integrating into the team then, or because they had been with each other for so long?
I mean,
I get your personality. I wouldn't say like the way you are, you'd be easy to be around pretty quick, but
well,
there's
yeah.
a team aspect to that, I'm sure.
So, I mean, when I got there, I mean, it was a nightmare getting there. Like, my flight got delayed, or it started circling in the air. Couldn't land at 29 Palms, and it was the worst. Because, like, you do have a little bit of anxiety to, like, meet guys you never met before.
Yeah.
Get into a team, have it, you know, be accepted. It's a big first impression. And especially with, like, you know, in the military, everything is like, you know, you'll be perfect at everything. Or if you get a bad, what do you call it?
Demerit, maybe? I don't know.
No, like reputation.
Yeah, bad. Okay.
It never leaves.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it
yeah,
never
for sure.
leaves.
Yeah.
And so, because you're not always around everybody. So, like, if all these guys hear about your reputation and you're only around these guys, they always still think you're that person. So,
Yeah.
they end up taking a flight to LAX, which is like hours from 29 Palms. 29 Palms is in the middle of the desert. And so I land, and they're like, get on a bus, everyone who's supposed to be there, and you're going to ride a bus now for a couple hours. So I'm supposed to be in at like 7 p.m. And I get in at like 2 a.m. And I'm like, the airport's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to get to base. And so I find this guy who's picking up some officers. I jump in his cargo van. I'm just like laying in the back, and he pulls up the base, and they're like, who's that guy? And nobody knows who I am. You know, I'm trying to explain my unit. And then I sleep in a chapel that night, and I heard them in the morning saying, this guy's going to be unauthorized absence. Like, they're going to be super mad when they find out, like, you know, like, I'm supposed to already be there and I'm not there. Kind of like I jumped ship, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, this was a great, you know,
Yeah.
first interaction.
Yep.
But I end up they find the right guys, whatever, they link up. And I won't say how I met everybody, I guess, but it was quite opening and freeing, I guess.
I remember the story.
Yeah. So
Your words were telling, so I think, yeah.
yeah, it was different. And but
You're walking through the restroom, and everybody's like,
yeah, no
up?
stalls.
Yeah.
Just shaking hands to everybody. Just, what's up, man? And but the first team I was on was it sucked. Even if they're listening, I don't care. It was terrible.
yeah.
And I was just like, I was a nobody. I was basically treated like crap. And my mom was at home praying that that I don't know if I had told her, but that, you know, my leadership would be wise and
Yeah. Yeah.
godly and all that kind of stuff, and that, or it'd be switched out, like, you know, but like that doesn't happen, you know, kind of thing. Like, this is it. This is your ride or die. And I had a couple weeks overseas, and a whole team basically got blown up. They all lived, but they had no more guys. They all had to go home. They had hospital and all that. So we had to do like an NFL draft, and I got drafted to fulfill one of those spots on the team. And that was like game changing.
Yeah.
From that point on,
Wow.
it was like,
The hand of God.
I was just,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. I mean, it went from the worst 2 weeks of my life to like everybody's like, how was it over there? I'm like, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So,
It's everything.
oh yeah. Like we were all in the same playing field. I mean, we were always together. We did our own thing. The guy who's, at the time, the sergeant, he was like all about everything. Like if they were like, here's a death mission, he's like, let's go. And I was like, this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
so we got to do a lot of cool stuff because he was like that.
Yeah.
He's always the first to jump up and say, we'll do it. And even if some of the guys are like, what? You know, like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? I was like, this is what I came for. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
You have a lot of respect for him, huh?
Oh, yeah, it was cool. He was awesome.
Mhm.
But
You just kept on. You were at war for how long?
7 months overseas, yeah. Like there for 7 months.
Yeah. Now I remember being with your dad in the hospital,
Yep.
and that was my first hospital visit. And I heard Pastor, I went with Pastor Larry. He was teaching me how to do a hospital visit, just in his relational way. And I was there when your dad's like, Pastor Larry said, "Are you going to call Dan?" And he said, "Nope, I'll be fine."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, was he diagnosed with stage 4 cancer? They gave him weeks to live,
Yeah.
and that was probably 2 or 3 months in to your deployment.
I think it was August actually, and I was coming home probably late September, and they didn't think I was going to see him.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what did he say?
What do you mean?
When you came home, like, did he tell you about that?
Yeah, car ride home. I actually was teasing him because he looked like he gained like 20 years just
Yeah.
while I was gone.
Yeah.
And
Are you calling him old?
yeah, I was like, wow, look at the old man hobble. Like he was just like slower. Like his hair was more
Yeah.
gray. Like everything
Yeah.
was like changing. Like, and
And it was only a year since you had seen him,
Yeah.
basically.
yeah. And on a car ride home, he was just like, yeah, I'm pretty exhausted. And he's like, so I got something to tell you. I was like, okay. I was riding shotgun. He was driving. And he's like, hospital visit, something, what, didn't go really well. Doctor gave me a couple weeks to live. He's kind of was like, let's just get to it.
Yeah.
And I just looked over at him and I was like, what do you say about that? And I was like so numb at that point to death. I didn't even realize it. Like as soon as he said it, I just thought, oh, okay, my dad's dead. Like there goes another, kind of
Yeah.
just like, and he's like, I said, what do you think about that? He goes, well, I was like, I'm not going to die. And the way he said it, I just went, okay. And literally everything switched. I was like, well, he's going to live. And I think I just laid my head back down and was just like, well, I don't think I fell asleep, but
Yeah.
just like went back to like, so how many miles or, what are you doing here? What are you doing tomorrow? Just
Yeah.
like everything
Yeah.
just, okay, it's over. You said, I'm not going to ever question that, because
Yeah.
I knew enough of, Jesus' story where like, he's going to go heal somebody. He's like, you come with me, everybody out.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to be the guy who gets kicked out.
Right.
So,
Right.
if somebody says I'm going to jump off the Eiffel Tower and live, it's like, okay, sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, give it a go,
I'm
pal.
not going to argue with you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why am I
Yeah.
going to sit here and doubt you? That's not going to help.
But your dad was listening to healing scriptures during that time. Whenever I was in there, he would listen to just scripture over and over and over. It was on every time we went in there, and his faith. I remember Pastor Larry looking at him like, "Are you sure about this?" You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he said that, but I remember the feeling in the moment that I had.
Yeah.
Like, we sure about this? You don't want to get Dan home? Nope.
Yeah.
I think what.
That would have
from my
solidified. He would have
perspective-
died
Wow.
if he brought me home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I feel like I could be wrong in this, but I just remember how I felt in the situation. I felt like he knew that was the right thing for you and it was the right thing for him.
Yeah.
But he was thinking so much about you that he knew you would want to finish a job. You wouldn't want to leave something undone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That'd been a terrible time to leave, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what am I going to do? I mean, if he already made his decision, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think, that would have, if he would have been talked into bringing me home, yeah, I think that would have kind of buried his faith. You know, even if he didn't realize it.
Yeah.
You know.
And so they went in for a routine surgery, and they saw cancer everywhere,
Yep.
and they closed them back up. I remember you saying something about air hitting cancer, like it's
Yeah, they called it a peak and freak.
peak and freak. Okay.
Yeah, they opened them up, saw it, and I guess the longer you leave it open, the faster it spreads. And so you're just spinning up time
Yeah.
by leaving them open. So they close it up, say we can't do anything. You're a dead man walking, sayonara.
Yeah.
And he made a deal after he decided to live. He made a deal with the doctor. He said, when I'm here in 6 months, will you do the surgery? And the guy was like, sure. He was like, it doesn't happen. And he goes, but when it does, you'll do the surgery. And the guy was like, sure. He's like, because that means something happened. And he's like, see you in 6 months. And that was it. It was like, we're just going to listen to healing scripture. Something's going on inside.
Yeah.
Yep. Goal was 6 months. So.
And I already told you, fast forward, Pastor Larry and I went to visit him right before he passed. And I'll never forget that. You know, it was the first hospital visit for me.
And 15 years later.
15 years later, yeah. And yeah, I remember you saying, I wish he would have told me this. So I was glad to share the story. But, you know, we're there. I'm picking up some tables, delivering them to Pastor Chris's. He's taking them for the wedding venue. You know, your dad did a phenomenal job building that wedding venue. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So cool. We're actually, Lauren's doing a wedding there.
Really?
So yeah,
they're using it.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
nice.
They're using it. So we get to actually be in there here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, so I asked him, I'm like, Ken, does it bother you? It's the same cancer, you know, the same issue came back after God healed you. In the context for anybody listening, like Ken was a friend of mine, you know, like I felt like he came over my house. We built tables, you know what I mean? I feel like I got to know him through you, but then, you know, through the years, I got to spend some independent time with him too, you know, just through building stuff, you know, and he interrupted me. He's like, I got 15 more years. I got 15 more years with my son. I got to meet all my grandkids. I got to get married again. He said, God gave me 15 more years. I'm ready.
Yeah.
So powerful for me to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, it made it more powerful. I feel like I didn't know all the story until after he passed. Then all my uncles and, you know, just talking about it and stuff, what happened behind the scenes. And I realized like how serious it was. I mean, I knew how serious it was, you know, whatever, but I thought they just saw it on the screen. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. And the doctor would be like, well, but it was the doctor that saw it and, you know, opened him up and saw it physically, was the same doctor that did the surgery and spent extra 5 hours. And whenever it was a 12-hour surgery, it was supposed to be 7. And whenever they came out, I was like, what's going on? And he said he spent the last 5 hours looking for evidence of cancer. I was like, holy cow. Like, it didn't go in remission.
It just disappeared.
Yeah. He's like, it's like a healthy colon.
Yeah.
Like, it was never there. He's like, he wouldn't have believed. Like, if he was a different doctor, he was like, I would have said, they jacked up.
Yeah.
But he was the one that actually opened them up. It wasn't a computer glitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything was like hands-on. So, yeah. But to know
and the Lord
that,
took it away completely.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
And to know that, and to know later on when he was like, I mean, he still fought. Like, he fought more than most people, but with his mind, he was like, I'm happy, I guess.
Yeah.
Because like he never stopped working.
No.
Like
he worked harder than
most people would be on their
5 guys.
legit deathbed.
Oh yeah.
And he worked another 3 months like manual labor.
He might have passed away a day or two after Pastor Larry and I got to see him again.
Yeah.
He was doing everything he could to run up the steps, to carry stuff. I'm like, Ken, you can't be doing this. He's like,
Yeah. He had me get a dresser, pick it up from his like pole building, you know, storage.
Yeah.
That I had there. And I was trying to get the whole thing. And he grabbed it, and I was like, Dad, I got it. Because, you know, he was weaker. And he gave me a look like I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
You know? And he just stared at me. He goes, I can lift it. And I was like, have at it. Like, other people would be like, go sit down, Ken. You know, like,
Yeah.
like in his life, they would, you know, and I'm like, nah, man, you can lift it. Like, I must let him lift the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because you can't take that away. But yeah, but the fact that he died after basically being like, telling you or whatever that, no, I'm cool. Like, I got to experience life. It just goes to show you how serious it is.
Yeah.
And like what God can do.
Right.
Like when you either say, let's believe, or let's just power through. There's, you know what I mean?
Back to even the authority that we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I heard something about when you live life, you're constantly running a recorder.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that happen to you when you're younger and throughout your life, what plays on that recorder becomes your subconscious. So like, you know, if your family was into business, but they always failed, like you're going to believe if I do a business, even if you continually start businesses as an adult, you'll always believe without realizing it, you're going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you power through, it's just always there. And it clicked after my dad passed. I was like, it's crazy because I think the first time he let it drop, well, they say let it drop into your heart, like, right? Like faith, not head faith, but like heart faith, where you truly believe, you're not believing you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it is like the science of like the subconscious. It like he was listening to stuff and reading stuff so much that his belief dropped into his subconscious.
Yeah.
And his recorder was then telling him, you're going to live. So what are you going to do next week? What are you going to do a year from now? What are you going to do 10 years from now? And he was making these plans knowingly, but subconsciously too, on a loop 24/7. And this last time, I mean, he lived 3, so whatever, it was 12 years cancer free. And then it came back and he lived 3 years with it. And I think the last time it was more, I believe, but it wasn't on the loop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because I saw the way he was eating and I'm like, hey, Dad, you wouldn't be eating like that. And he's like, I'm going to enjoy this meal. And I'm like, okay, but like, it's a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And he just didn't care. And I was like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
What a good man.
Yeah.
What's your favorite lesson you learned from your dad?
That's a good one. I mean, I'm trying to think of something deep, but
No, it
kind
doesn't
of
have
what
to
we
be
already
deep.
talked about is probably just well, I'd say just not like fretting the little stuff and like I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, I guess like overseas, like I was nuts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I guess in life you can sometimes, it gets monotonous or whatever.
Yeah.
And, but I guess if I go back through different parts of my life where sometimes I am like thoughtful and like analytical and like stepping out the process, you know, and I probably need to do a little less of that maybe sometimes, but there's other times where like, I guess spiritually, I mean, that's probably the greatest lesson that I learned maybe about like what he possibly gave me would be like the life overseas, which is like, I felt like I was just that time of my life, I was given like a greater gift of faith.
Yeah.
And like, it was just like nothing scared me.
Yeah.
Like, and it feels weird saying it. I've talked to guys who've done some wild stuff, and some of them really surprised me when they were like, I was afraid of everything. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. they were savages. And they're
Mhm.
like, I was afraid of dying.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like it never crossed my mind. You know what I mean? Like, and I say like 5 times, I can count them on my hand, the times I was like, oh man, I just sat and like felt the fear.
Yeah.
Like, here we go. And then you just process it and you're like, no. And people say, well, you shouldn't be like that. But I literally
real.
would just pray to God and say, hey, if I die, you jacked up because you called me here. So let's do this. And then I would just not think about it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can't talk to God like that. And I'm like, I mean,
Read Psalms.
I'm reminding him of his promise.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing.
Read
And it
Psalms.
wasn't like arrogant.
Yeah.
I was literally
No.
saying like, I'm either going to show up in heaven and be like, what happened?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I believed, or we're going to get through this. So yeah, I'd say like, you know, we jumped out of an airplane, me, my brother, my dad. And when we were doing the, he'd be like, that's what I taught you. You know what I mean? Like, this was your greatest gift, or my greatest gift to you.
Yeah.
But it was like this instructional thing where you're like going through the what not to do. You're gonna die.
Oh, I know. I feel like I know the punchline of this one.
There was like
I can see it.
20 of them. They're like, if you touch this, you die. If you do this, you die. If you do this, you die. And we're like, geez, this is dangerous, you know? And me and my brother are just kind of watching it on this couch, and we hear snoring, and we look over, and my dad's passed out, asleep. And we're like, Dad, you should know this stuff. He's like, I don't care about this. We're jumping out of an airplane. And we're like, okay. He goes, you pull a cord. How hard is it? And we're like, all right. So, I mean, and it wasn't like he just put that show on. Like,
Yeah.
he went up and he tapped the guy he was with, and he was like, let's roll out of this.
Yeah.
Like, this will be fun. And he was just like having a blast. But, yeah, so I don't know, like, I guess no fear, like in a lot of instances. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like when you know, I guess, like if you say, hey, I think you should open this massive business, I'll be terrified.
Mm-hmm.
But if I know God has called me to it, whatever it is at that stage, then it's like, whoop-de-doo. You
Right.
know, like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Fall
Yeah.
asleep during the death, instructional video.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Jesus in the boat, sleeping when everybody else is flipping out.
Yeah.
He could rest because he knew.
Yeah. Yep.
He knew what he was called to do.
Didn't they just hear a message about that too?
I don't know,
Like,
maybe.
Like, he literally taught them about that.
Yeah.
And then they experience it, and he's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we just talked about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not in every part of life, but definitely certain parts of life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like the whole spiritual war. Like, there's probably different parts of life where there is fear where I haven't even noticed it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And where does that go back to? What does it point to?
Yeah.
The fear, is it, an experience where, I didn't do the right thing one time and now I'm going to define my whole life based off of that shame that I experienced.
Yeah.
And it's a part that's, kind of jacked up because you saw something or, somebody said something. Where does it go? Where does it come from? There's just like I've been working on this a little bit because in certain situations I found myself feeling intense anger or intense fear. Like I've been actually taking myself to those places on purpose and sitting in them. Like I think the feeling of being misunderstood is one of the hardest emotions. So like, man, when I'm misunderstood, I'm purposefully quiet and I'm just going to sit in it because I know my heart. I don't need to argue. I know what I meant, I'm just sit in it and like ask myself rather than trying to defend or like qualify unless the person really needs it. And I said something like, and I need to apologize, but like, if it's on them, I'm just going to sit in it and just think about it. Like, why does this bother me so bad?
Mhm. Yeah. And just grow under pressure.
Just face it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just face the fear, face the anger, face the
Yeah. That's like
face the
a really good
concern.
way to grow is to always have that mindset of like, somebody does whatever and it really gets under your skin. And instead of saying, I'm so ticked off that I'm mad or fuming or whatever, or, all these emotions, every time you experience one, you sit there and you say, oh yeah, this is going to teach me patience because I got a new test.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You see it as a test rather than
Yeah.
just being ticked off. Now,
Yeah.
my wife's going to be telling me if this airs, she's going to say, what about all those tests on the road that you keep driving around?
The only time yeah.
Those tests are all in the left lane.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be in the right lane.
Yeah. And they have an Ohio license plate.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But we have to face those things. We have to embrace them. And man, you've been I just want to say thanks as we just kind of close up because you've been a really good friend for many years, working together. Man, I was questioning a lot, and I was questioning myself, and I was questioning my past experiences, and I never felt like I could say something to you that I had to like guard in that time. I think you might have been, you, Lauren, Dan, we spent so much time together. You're probably the one.
Probably because I don't have much of a memory. That you said it, I wouldn't remember it.
Yeah, I was just processing a lot, man. But you always had something wise, a good outlook on things. You're just well thought. I just trust you a lot, and it's, man, I might carry the title of pastor, but I feel like in that season, you pastored my heart well. Just cracking jokes and making things light for me was really it was just really healthy for me, teaching me how to do certain aspects of the job that I had no clue how to do prior. Man,
Some good ones.
yeah. I remember, I think it was so cold outside. I was pouring water on my hands because it was warming my hands up, and you're like, I don't think you want to do that very long. But this water's warm. Like, no, it isn't. It's just that cold outside. The groundwater's warmer than the frostbite almost on our hands.
Icicles on your fingertips.
Yeah. But man, I appreciate you. Appreciate your friendship. Many years, man.
Yeah.
And
you too.
And your wisdom, dude, through the years. You have a brilliant mind. And I have some things I've just been, kind of taken to the Lord. I was in a prayer retreat just a couple days ago, and I felt like the Lord just speaking to my heart, and I just want to talk to you about, taking some men through some freedom stuff and figuring that thing out. Stuff that you were talking about earlier, I think.
Yep.
There's going to be something there.
Yeah.
So you have it in you, Dan.
Well, there's a lot changing in this world.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. I agree. So thanks, man.
Thank you.
Good to talk with you today. You did great.